Act 1. The illusion of safety. The global financial system operates on a set of rules that were written for a world that no longer exists. For generations, the path to financial security was standard, predictable, and universally accepted. Go to school, get a secure job, live below your means, and put your remaining cash into a traditional savings account or a conservative long-term retirement fund. This was the foundation of the middle-class dream. It was a strategy built on the premise that patience, hard work, and steady accumulation would inevitably lead to freedom. But today, following that exact roadmap is the most financial risk a person can take. The economic landscape has fundamentally shifted, yet the psychological conditioning remains the same. Millions of people are still playing an outdated game, executing strategies that are mathematically guaranteed to erode their purchasing power over time. They are operating under the illusion of safety. To understand why the old playbook is broken, we have to look at the concept of risk itself. Most people define financial risk as volatility, the sharp ups and downs of the stock market, the sudden drops in real estate cycles, or the unpredictable wild west of emerging digital assets. Because volatility feels uncomfortable, the natural human reaction is to seek comfort in stability. A bank account balance feels stable. It does not fluctuate violently on a screen. If you have $10,000 in a savings account today, you will still see $10,000 on your statement next month. It feels safe because the number is static. But this static nature is precisely where the danger lies. This is the 0% trap. In economics, there is a massive difference between nominal value and real value. Nominal value is the face value of your money, the number printed on the bill or displayed on your banking application. Real value is your actual purchasing power, what that money can actually buy in the real world of goods, services, land, and assets. When you leave capital sitting dormant in a traditional banking structure, you are optimizing for nominal stability while completely sacrificing real value. You are paying an invisible tax. That tax is inflation, compounded by monetary expansion. When central banks expand the money supply, the total circulating currency increases, which naturally dilutes the purchasing power of every individual unit of currency already in existence. Your bank account is not a vault, it is a leaking bucket. While you sleep, the value is slowly draining out. If the cost of living, real estate, energy, and high-quality food is rising at an accelerated rate annually, and your capital is yielding minimal returns inside a legacy institution, you are not saving money. You are safely, predictably, and quietly losing wealth every single day. This realization is the first step toward what we call wealth alchemy. Alchemy, in its historical definition, was the pursuit of turning base metals into gold, taking something common, stagnant, and low in value, and transforming it into something precious and permanent. In the modern economic context, wealth alchemy is the precise science of financial transformation. It is the transition from a consumer mindset to an asset builder mindset. It is the realization that money is not an end goal. It is a fluid, energetic resource that must be directed, shaped, and accelerated into productive systems. The core problem is that our societal infrastructure is built to create consumers, not alchemists. From a young age, the mechanics of modern life encourage us to trade our most finite asset, time, for a highly taxed, depreciating medium of exchange, fiat currency. We take that currency and immediately exchange it for lifestyle liabilities, or we hand it back to the very financial institutions that lend it out to generate massive returns for themselves while returning a fraction of a percent to us. We are trained to build everyone else's machine while neglecting our own. To break out of this cycle, you must first dismantle the myth of the safe, linear path. True security does not come from a steady paycheck or a stagnant bank balance. True security comes from control. It comes from owning assets that produce tangible value, command pricing power, and operate independently of your direct physical labor. It requires moving away from the defensive posture of hoarding cash and stepping into an offensive strategy of capital deployment. The world is changing rapidly, driven by automation, globalized trade logistics, and decentralized systems. The strategies that built wealth over the last 40 years will not preserve it over the next 40. It is time to stop playing defense with your future and start mastering the fundamental chemistry of money. Act 2. The 3 pillars of wealth alchemy. Transformation requires a framework. It cannot rely on luck, market timing, or chasing short-term trends. True financial alchemy is a systematic process built on 3 foundational pillars: velocity, leverage, and asymmetry. When these 3 forces are properly aligned, they turn raw capital into a compounding engine that operates continuously. The first pillar. Velocity. The first pillar is velocity. In physics, velocity is the speed of an object in a given direction. In finance, velocity is the speed at which your money moves through the economy, returns to you, and is immediately redeployed into new cash-flowing assets. Most traditional financial advice advocates for the store and pray model. You take a portion of your income, lock it away in a long-term fund, and wait decades hoping the broader markets steadily rise. This model completely lacks velocity. The capital is immobilized. It is stuck in a single container for a massive portion of your productive life. An alchemist views capital as water, not concrete. Water must flow. If it sits still, it becomes stagnant and toxic. Capital must remain in constant motion. When you deploy capital into a project, an enterprise, or an asset class, the objective is to generate yield or a return of capital as efficiently as possible so that initial capital can be pulled back out and directed into the next opportunity while the original asset continues to run on pure profit. Think about how a successful commercial enterprise operates. A high-performing business doesn't buy inventory and let it sit on shelves for years. They focus on inventory turnover. They want to buy, sell, recoup the cash, and reinvest in more inventory as many times as possible within a single calendar year. Every turn of that inventory generates profit. Your personal capital must be treated with the exact same operational discipline. Velocity means shortening the time frame between investment, return, and reinvestment. By increasing the frequency of capital rotation, you exponentially compound your growth without necessarily needing to take on higher magnitudes of fundamental risk. The second pillar. Leverage. The second pillar is leverage. This is the ultimate multiplier of human effort. Archimedes famously stated that if you gave him a lever long enough and a place to stand, he could move the entire world. In the modern economy, leverage is the mechanism that separates your income from your physical hours. If you only earn money when you are physically working, your wealth capacity is strictly capped by the laws of biology. There are only 24 hours in a day, and you must sleep for a significant portion of them. To build permanent freedom, you must deploy levers that multiply your presence. There are 4 primary forms of leverage available in the modern era. Capital leverage, utilizing borrowed funds or strategic financial structures to control larger income-generating assets than your liquid cash would normally allow. Labor leverage, building teams, partnering with specialists, and utilizing human talent to execute complex operations, allowing you to focus purely on high-level strategy. Systems and AMP, automation leverage, deploying software, digital tracking systems, automated invoicing, and streamlined supply chains that execute repetitive operational tasks flawlessly 24 hours a day without human fatigue. Media and AMP, code leverage, the newest and most scalable form of leverage. Creating digital content, software code, or intellectual property that can be replicated and distributed globally millions of times at zero marginal cost. When you integrate these forms of leverage, you shift from being a manual laborer in your financial ecosystem to being the chief systems engineer. You are no longer turning the gears by hand, You are designing a mechanized factory that turns the gears for you. The third pillar, asymmetry. The third pillar is asymmetry. Most people are conditioned to believe that to achieve high returns, you must take on massive, catastrophic risks. This is a linear myth designed by institutions that want to keep retail investors cautious. The goal of Wealth Alchemy is the exact opposite, seeking asymmetric risk profiles. An asymmetric opportunity is one where the defined downside is minimal and tightly controlled, while the potential upside is multiples higher. Symmetric opportunities are a fair fight. You risk $1 to make $1. Asymmetric opportunities tilt the playing field entirely in your favor. You structurally position yourself so that if you are wrong, you lose a tiny, acceptable fraction of capital. But if you are right, the return transforms. It involves building businesses where the startup costs are low, but the addressable market is global. When you build a life around asymmetric positioning, you don't need to be right 100% of the time. You can be wrong multiple times, absorb those small, calculated losses with ease, and allow a single major win to propel you to an entirely new tier of financial capability. Act 3. The mindset shift from consumer to architect. Every physical structure in the world began as a blueprint. Before a single brick was laid, an architect had to conceptualize the design, calculate the stresses, and map out the flow of the space. Wealth creation follows the exact same sequence. It cannot manifest in reality until the internal psychological architecture is completely rebuilt. You cannot build a fortress using a temporary tent mindset. The fundamental shift requires moving from a consumer orientation to an architect orientation. A consumer views the world through the lens of outgoings and immediate gratification. When a consumer receives capital, their primary thought process is, what can I buy with this? What product, asset, or experience can I acquire to signal status or find immediate comfort? They look at cash as a tool for purchasing liabilities, items that drop in value the moment they are acquired and require continuous financial maintenance. An architect looks at the world through the lens of structural systems. When an architect receives capital, they view it as raw material, units of energy that can be shaped into structural columns, foundational slabs, or automated machinery. They don't see a dollar bill as a voucher for a consumer good. They see it as an economic worker that can be deployed to capture more market share. Their focus is entirely on asset acquisition and asset creation. Plus, the capital flow, plus consumer path, income, GT, expenses, GT, consumer liabilities, draining wealth, architect path, income, and GT, cash flowing assets, and GT, automated reinvestment, building wealth. This structural shift requires a high level of emotional discipline. It requires overcoming the psychological pressure of modern consumer culture, which is designed to keep individuals in a state of perpetual financial vulnerability by constantly elevating their cost of lifestyle to match their rising income. This is the classic trap. As earnings increase, expenses scale perfectly in tandem, leaving the individual just as dependent on their next paycheck at 40 years old as they were at 20. To break this alignment, you must learn to view your finances like a corporate balance sheet. You are the chief executive officer of your personal life. Your household is a business enterprise. An enterprise cannot survive if its operational expenses consume 100% of its gross revenue. It must generate a net surplus, and that surplus must be aggressively retained and deployed into research, development, and asset acquisition. When you start looking at your personal capital with this level of corporate detachment, your emotional relationship with money changes. You stop fearing volatility, you stop seeking validation through surface-level consumption, and you start finding deep internal satisfaction in the quiet growth of your net asset position. Act 4. Navigating the new global economy. We are currently living through one of the most volatile macroeconomic transitions in human history. The global supply chains, trade corridors, and labor markets that defined the late 20th century are undergoing a massive realignment. For the modern alchemist, this transition is not something to fear. It is an unprecedented arena of opportunity. High volatility always creates massive price discrepancies and structural inefficiencies. And where there is inefficiency, there is profound wealth generation. One of the most powerful macro trends of this decade is the rise of cross-border trade corridors, particularly between emerging manufacturing hubs and rapidly growing regional consumer markets. In the past, international trade was the exclusive playground of massive multinational conglomerates that controlled shipping fleets and global distribution networks. Today, technology has completely decentralized logistics. A single individual, operating with a lean team and high-quality business automation software, can orchestrate the movement of physical goods across international borders with immense precision. By identifying high-demand consumer goods, securing direct manufacturing partnerships, and utilizing structured regional shipping containers, small enterprises can move thousands of units of product monthly into hungry markets with minimal overhead. Concurrently, we are witnessing a massive evolution in digital infrastructure. Real estate and physical commodities will always remain foundational pillars of wealth due to their intrinsic tangible value. But the digital layer of the global economy is where hypervelocity occurs. The integration of automated invoicing, digital management systems, and algorithmic inventory tracking allows modern businesses to operate across multiple jurisdictions simultaneously. You can own physical assets in one region, manufacture products in another, and manage the entire financial architecture from a laptop anywhere on Earth. Pascal. Plus, modern cross-border logistics. Podcast. Production Hub, and JET. Digital Logistics Tracking, and GT. Target Consumer Market, Low Cost, MFG. Automated Invoicing, High Demand Cash Flow. Furthermore, the financial world is witnessing the undeniable maturation of decentralized digital assets. For years, traditional legacy networks dismissed alternative digital stores of value as temporary trends or highly speculative experiments. But as structural inflation persists and confidence in standard sovereign currencies faces pressure, institutional frameworks are adapting. High-utility digital protocols, networks designed to facilitate high-speed, cross-border settlement, automated smart contracts, and programmatic asset tracking, are locking in their positions as foundational components of the new financial architecture. An alchemist does not emotionalize asset classes. They do not become blindly loyal to real estate, obsessed with stocks, or fanatical about digital assets. Instead, they look at the entire landscape objectively, analyzing the specific utility, cash flow potential, and velocity metrics of each asset class, and then build an interconnected ecosystem where each component strengthens the other. Act 5. Blueprint for the Future. Building. A permanent financial fortress requires moving from theory to immediate, disciplined execution. The Wealth Alchemy blueprint is not a passive philosophy. It is a rigorous, active framework designed to construct a self-sustaining financial engine over a multi-year horizon. This process occurs in 3 clear, successive operational phases. Phase 1. Capital consolidation and de-risking. The initial step is capital consolidation and de-risking. Before you can build upward, you must stabilize your foundation. This means conducting a ruthless audit of your current financial position. You must identify and eliminate all wealth-draining liabilities, unproductive high-interest obligations, stagnant capital accounts that are actively losing value to inflation, and underperforming assets that demand more maintenance energy than they return in cash flow. If you hold properties or positions that are highly leveraged but yielding minimal real returns, this phase requires systematic liquidation to free up capital liquidity. Liquidity is your ammunition. In a volatile economic environment, having clean, unencumbered capital ready for rapid deployment is a massive competitive advantage. You must clean the slate, establish an unbreakable baseline of personal cash flow surplus, and ensure that your core operational expenses are entirely under your control. Phase 2. Systematic asset deployment. Once your foundation is stabilized and capital liquidity is secured, you immediately transition into Phase 2. Systematic asset deployment. This is where you begin constructing your compounding engine. You do not scatter your capital blindly across a dozen different speculative ideas. Instead, you focus heavily on deep positioning within specific target sectors where you possess unique knowledge, structural advantages, or direct logistical control. This involves acquiring high-quality physical assets that offer intrinsic value, structural tax advantages, and consistent cash flow generation. Simultaneously, you deploy a portion of your liquid capital into scaling high-velocity cash flow businesses, such as automated regional trade operations, digital product distribution, or scalable service enterprises. In this phase, you also establish long-term positions in foundational digital assets and utility-driven protocols, allowing you to capture the massive asymmetric upside of the macro technology shift. The goal of Phase 2 is to create multiple independent streams of incoming revenue that are completely decoupled from your physical labor. The compounding engine. Plus. Liquid capital inflow. Plus. VTT. Physical assets, high-velocity trade. Digital assets, intrinsic stable, immediate cash flow, asymmetric upside. Plus.
That's investment into engine. Phase 3. Automated velocity and expansion. The final stage is Phase 3. Automated velocity and expansion. This is the stage where the alchemy becomes truly self-sustaining. Here, your primary focus shifts from building individual assets to optimizing the interaction between them. You implement comprehensive automation software, advanced digital invoicing tools, and remote management structures so that the day-to-day operations of your business and property portfolios require minimal direct intervention from you. The cash flow generated by your physical properties and trade enterprises is automatically routed, pooled, and instantly redeployed into expanding your highest performing assets or capturing new asymmetric opportunities. The engine begins to feed itself. The velocity of your capital reaches a point where the compounding effect completely outpaces any external economic friction, inflation, or market corrections. You have built a perpetual wealth machine. Conclusion: the divide between those who are caught in the traditional cycle and those who achieve permanent financial sovereignty is not defined by raw intelligence, genetic luck, or initial capital inheritance. It is defined entirely by the framework through which they view the world. One group continues to play a legacy game inside an environment designed to systematically dilute their efforts. They save depreciating cash, trade their life energy directly for hours, and look for safety in the very structures that perpetuate financial stagnation. The other group chooses to become architects. They accept the reality of a volatile world, master the core chemistry of money, and build permanent systems. They apply velocity to their capital, leverage to their actions, and look for asymmetry in every single position they take. They recognize that true wealth is not about raw consumption or material vanity. It is about building an unbreakable fortress of personal freedom for themselves and their families. is. The global economy will continue to shift, currencies will continue to evolve, and market cycles will inevitably fluctuate. The old safety net is gone, and no one is coming to build your future for you. The machinery of the modern financial system is already running every second of the day. The choice before you is simple. You can continue to let that machine use your time and energy to fuel its own growth, or you can step into the role of the alchemist, take total control of your structural blueprint, and master the engine yourself.
The path to sovereign wealth is fully mapped out. The formulas are absolute, the logistics are accessible, and the tools are in your hands. Stop playing defense. Stop letting your capital sit dormant. Welcome to the new paradigm. Welcome to Wealth Alchemy.